Good evening. We're appreciative of this opportunity to share with you a change that we plan to implement this June 2015 with our summer school program that we offer at Emmaus High School. You'll learn tonight that while we plan to continue to offer several courses using a traditional face-to-face instructional model, one that we've used for many years. And the change is that we plan to implement a hybrid instructional model in which students will take courses online. This online instructional model will also be partnered with a learning lab that you'll hear a bit more about. And this is an opportunity in which students taking online courses will meet at a scheduled period of time, face-to-face with the Emmaus High School teacher and the student and the teacher. The student will be able to provide the teacher with differentiated instruction based on where that student is performing with the online content. Joining me for the presentation this evening are Mr. Mark Covell, who's the assistant principal at Emmaus High School, and he's also the administrator for our summer school program at Emmaus High School, and Ms. Laura Whitman, who's our supervisor of secondary curriculum. Mr. Covell and Ms. Whitman will share with you this evening the rationale for the change in the instructional model, as well as highlight the instructional benefits that we anticipate through this hybrid model.
Good evening. Just a little background information on the old model. The old model had 22 teachers, 4 of which were recruited from outside the East Penn School District. It was run in a traditional manner, 3 periods in the morning, 70 minutes apiece, 5 days a week. Because of scheduling issues, we could sometimes run in a deficit because we might not have enough students in that course, and yet it would require the full amount of time on the instructor's behalf to deliver that curriculum. So if we didn't have a high enough enrollment, it gave us the opportunity to run in a deficit for certain courses, as well as scheduling conflicts you would have in a normal schedule, a normal master schedule, a normal master schedule, because you're running 3 periods, certain combinations that students might need could result in scheduling conflicts.
And so one of the providers that we looked at several, but the provider that we landed on was Edgenuity. They provide online courseware that basically allows us to deliver mastery-based learning. And so in terms of the remediation that we have been focused on and the acceleration that we've provided, the students now would be pre-assessed in order for the curriculum to be customized per student. And the progress would be based on the mastery of standards and concepts. So there's actually a retake built into the courseware.
Comparing the old model to the new model would look like this. The old model, we would have attendance issues. Attendance was a requirement of participation in summer school. Too many absences and the students were taken out of the program. So that would limit student participation. Anybody with a trip planned with their family, more than 2 days of absence, they would be exited from the program. We would have some mastery concerns because their remediation reflected that attendance and the time on task and seat time and project completion, but it wasn't necessarily specifically focused on student individual mastery. It was based on completing the course. Scheduling conflict issues, again, needing to run those multiple sections and needing to run multiple sections depending on enrollments could lead to increased costs. And the staffing issues that I mentioned before, 22 teachers, but 4 of whom needed to be recruited from outside the district to fill our needs.
And so in the new model, obviously attendance flexibility becomes a strength because students are able to work on this course wherever they have access to the internet. And in terms of the provider, we also like to look at this courseware with our students this summer in reevaluating what we provide to our cyber students with BLN during the regular school year. In terms of the pre-assessment differentiation and the mastery-based learning, I think one of the larger things is that with that old seat time model, now you're taking, for acceleration for instance, a 160-hour course, and the students would take the end of course exam and say it would be health. That would be whittled down to perhaps the 20 hours of material they don't know. So again, completely customized for the student. But again, demonstrating true mastery when they take the end of course assessment to demonstrate that. In terms of the scheduling issues or staffing issues, I think Mark covered that. But the other big thing that we're going to try to do this year with summer school is, again, besides the potential for greater credit recovery, it would be that students could take the Keystone during the summer in a July session. So students remediating Algebra 1 or perhaps their English 10 could again retest for that Keystone And we would have, it would be much closer than right now, our current situation where students remediate and would test again and wait until December. Okay, so in the new model, again, our experiential courses would run as they have in the past. So things like our WellFit would still be conducted, our driver's education. The hybrid would require there be learning lab time for each student. And again, this would be differentiated based on support a student needs. The lab itself would be staffed by 3 teachers. The lab would be open Monday through Thursday, 9 to 12, and it would be staffed by a special ed teacher, a language arts teacher, and a math certified teacher. When students begin the coursework, they must attend the lab 3 hours per week. And again, we would have increased flexibility and customization through the service of the courseware for courses that are covered using that content. Again, with this new model, another big item is that there would be decreased likelihood for deficit spending. We're not trying to deliver content based on 3 kids who need Algebra 2 and 2 kids who need Algebra 1, and it not necessarily covering for the cost of the teacher.
When we look ahead at projected costs, you can see that we have a summary of the summer school costs for summer 2014, and we refer to it as the old or the former model. You can see that the costs for summer school in the past have been exclusively through salaries. And if you look at our projected costs, if we would use the old or former model for summer 2015, we are continuing to face a deficit in the summer school model. However, when we look at the change that we're planning to implement specifically with the hybrid model, you now notice that there is a split of costs between the coursework, Edgenuity, that we explained, as well as the salary for the Emmaus High School teachers who will teach those experiential courses, the health, wellness, fitness, the aquatics courses, as well as those 3 teachers who will serve in the learning lab to meet with those students who are taking the online courses regularly. And so when we talked about greater predictability of the spending, we can look at knowing what those costs will be for Edgenuity and then planning a bit better for those salary costs for those experiential courses. We also, in an attempt to cover that deficit, are investigating our summer school costs for students. And there may be a potential increase of $20 to $40 per course to address those deficits as well. So our goal this evening was to share with you a summary of our plan to implement the hybrid model this summer, and certainly welcome any questions that you might have.
Any questions for the team? Mr. Panofsky?
Yeah, a couple of them. Where it says 3 teachers in the lab for how many students? Do you know, have an estimate of how many students you might expect for those 3 hours a week?
The enrollments this is based on is around 180 that accessed those courses last year.
And so, based on the number you had last year, you think three is enough? I mean, how many? 3 hours a week for how long is the lab open per day?
3 hours.
Oh, so it's just a set 3 hours. Oh, so it's not like they can come anytime for 3 hours. It's a set 3 hours.
And the students would be scheduled.
Oh, I see. So they would be. You wouldn't have all 180 in the same 3 hours. Thank you. The second thing is the Edgenuity fee. Is that based on the 180 students? Is it based on the number of classes you're offering? What if next year we offered more classes or had more students?
The fee is variable based on whether the student is taking it as a remediation course or an acceleration course, the amount of time and the amount of content that they're going to receive. So a remediation student would take the diagnostic, presumably would be accessing less coursework, and therefore the cost is lower. In terms of an acceleration course, with more coursework, and therefore the cost is a little greater. That number is based on the number of students that remediated last year and the number of students that accelerated last year, and it's broken down that way.
So this is sort of an estimate.
It is an estimate, correct?
Thank you.
Mr. Bell?
Yes, I want to make sure the $31,095 is a fee to this service, for the classes supplied during the summer school session. And it is not a licensing fee, and we don't own any software at the end of this. It's just simply a service fee from this company. Is that correct?
Correct. And through that, in that fee, the vendor also pays for a concept coach available to the student from 7 a.m. until 11 p.m., as well as certified teachers available to the student in addition to our certified teachers.
Okay. And the intent is to have that $31,000 cover the entire, actually $53,253, something like that, in terms of the fees that are paid by the students who have to attend or want to attend summer school, correct?
Correct, or the tuition costs.
Okay. That's fine as far as the fees for that go, but what about the students who need remediation and A, don't have internet access at home, or B, don't own a computer or an iPad or anything like that? What are the provisions for those students?
Our libraries are open, all of our libraries from 7 to 4 p.m. They're staffed with a pair to make the equipment and internet available to students in that mode, as opposed to our traditional model that, again, we were bringing in students in our bricks and mortar model from 9 to 12 during the summer school period. In terms of, do you want to answer the cost? For a student who can't afford, what we've done in the past.
So this takes into account what we've always done in the past, which is for students who have free or reduced lunch, we do discount the cost of summer school to allow them greater access to it. So this reflects that in the, it's part of the hybrid model as well.
Okay, but it's not exactly hybrid for a student who can't afford it. If they have to come into the library between 7 and 4 every day to take these courses for how many hours? What, 3 hours a day or whatever it's required for them to perform adequately over the summer. So we have no other provision other than come to the library.
In the traditional model that we had last summer, a student would come into the school for a period of 70 minutes based on the number of courses that they needed, and then they would obviously have some work that they would be completing outside. So again, the lab would be running during the 9 to 12 with the certified teachers, but then yes, if the student had work complete, they'd have the library available to them to complete after they finish their lab.
But they might have daily assignments that they'd have to spend at least 70 minutes on in the library at school, which requires transportation from home to school, which would mean they're basically in the traditional model is that they're standing in front of a computer instead of a teacher.
They had work to complete, they wanted to use it in the library. They could.
But that's the only provision we've made for students without internet access at home and without home computers.
At this point, yes.
Okay, you might want to think about that a little bit. That would be my only comment. Thank you.
Any questions or comments? Dr. Munson?
Yeah, I'm curious what data you have, not on the cost side, but on the outcome side. How does this model compare in terms of student achievement to the traditional model?
I can speak to that. When I was here as an assistant principal prior and ran the summer school, I was in contact with Parkland School District, and I consulted with them who had made the transition from bricks and mortar to an online hybrid such as we are offering now. And again, I received very positive feedback in terms of achievement as well as parent satisfaction, because the parents were also getting progress. It's a little bit different from our normal summer school model in that there's a weekly progress being available to parents and students to let them know where they are in the course.
So the main, if I understand correctly, the main reason for your confidence that this will work is that it's worked at Parkland?
No, that's not the main reason. It's worked elsewhere, and in terms of the courseware, what I am confident is that in remediation in Algebra 1, the student might be able to, again, become proficient in Keystone, which is now critical for our current freshman and sophomore class.
This model also provides us the ability to gather data on student mastery. Under the old model, what we have is, we had a relatively low number of students who were not successful in the program. So, taking away the double negatives, most students were successful in the program. But what we were measuring is their overall level of mastery. And this will allow us to know where our students are coming in, those that are failing courses, where they're coming in, maybe where our shortfalls are. And this program does allow us to gather some of the data that maybe we haven't gathered.
Okay. Yeah, it's troubling insofar as, well, not with respect to this particular program, but we're drowning in evidence that the online model does not provide equivalent education to one that's face-to-face. And so I at least be very interested in, in seeing what kinds of evidence can be marshaled to see that this is effective, even on multiple choice tests. I have another question on the cost side. Have you considered, is it feasible to take that $31,000 this year, maybe next year, a certain number of years, and develop the district's own contents on Moodle using the existing systems we already have, and in that way we're not burdened with that cost in perpetuity, but we would have more control over the education rather than outsourcing it, and it could ultimately be cheaper.
Edgenuity actually gives us the capability to customize content. And certainly, once we work with the content this summer, we would then know future work that we might have to customize.
So is it your plan to use them once or twice, and then think about how, we could learn from that to create a sort of in-house version of what they're doing?
We already have, with our FCS course in high school, we already have developed online content for Moodle. Certainly, we want to see what Edgenuity has to offer and work with their existing structure and perhaps customize the content through Edgenuity. Whether or not we completely leave Edgenuity, I don't know that we're ready to make that leap just yet.
Okay. How much experience and expertise does the district have through its existing hybrid and system for deploying something like this?
And I would say, point of order, could we please use the microphones? Thank you.
Last year, there was an FCS course that was developed as a hybrid part of the FCS teacher to deliver the content for independent living. One of the reasons why we considered Edgenuity and some of the abilities inside Edgenuity to be advantageous was, again, the ability for students to have retakes, to also, they have put in something essentially to prevent students from advancing through some of the instructional pieces. There is, again, not necessarily what you, and I consider, again, not a live face-to-face, but the instructional model is much different than the current cyber provider that we use. And so, again, introducing that to our administrative teams, we did think this was superior in terms of its instructional flow. It would be something that we would like to do down the line to, again, move some of our coursework into a hybrid fashion.
And then I think this is my last question. Does Edgenuity, do they measure achievement in any way other than a multiple choice test for mastery?
Yes.
Or
There is, well, and there's actually some pre-assessments for students. For instance, if they even complete an essay, there's artificial intelligence that's used to also analyze the essay for them to basically provide them with some of perhaps the low-hanging issues with their essay. And in terms of, again, assessments, anything can be customized on the backside of the Edgenuity assessments. So I could demonstrate that, but everything is customizable in terms of all assessments and also in instruction in terms of what's being instructed upon.
Is it your plan to customize those assessments for this coming summer?
Some of them, yes. Yes, we have a meeting with Edgenuity, with the department chairs to look at that.
Great, thank you.
Other questions from the team, Dr. Bacher?
One of the scheduling issues in the past, I assume is related to the things you talked about, is the final schedule often wasn't determined until the weekend before classes started. Do you expect that to be better in this model?
Yes. Obviously, going outside of the schedule, again, before in the past, when we wanted to offer something for acceleration, there was somewhat of a magic number for what we needed to be able to offer that course based on being able to afford the teacher. And now, in terms of acceleration, students will be able to take pretty much everything that we have listed, and there won't be that last minute cancellation the week of the summer school. So that is an advantage. And in turn, it's sort of the same thing with remediation, because again, we'll be able to remediate a student based on their needs, not necessarily that number.
Just to understand your question with the final exam schedule. Can I
No,
understand
I was talking
the
about
final schedule of summer school?
of what you're going to offer often wasn't available until the weekend before the classes started.
Correct, so that's a major advantage, as Ms. Whitman just spoke to, of this program, whereby the students would get whatever it is that they've signed up for. And then coupled with that, they would be scheduled, if they had any experiential classes as well, we would schedule them into those.
Because of the scheduling issues, you base this on the same number of people in class, in the
Correct.
same groups. How would that change? If the scheduling is more flexible, do you anticipate perhaps we would have more students opting for this option?
I think that we will have more students opting for
And
this
how would
option.
that change
The financials,
the
the student tuition will cover the cost of the Ingenuity delivery. So that should still remain as a zero cost item. Now, if that, I don't anticipate the numbers in experiential would go up, because we still will have to maintain our normal attendance procedures in order for those students to access those classes. So those numbers I anticipate to be the same. So therefore, the variability cost of needing more teachers in the classrooms to offer period by period courses, I don't expect much variability there.
And then just going back to one of the answers to Reverend Donoski's questions. So what would the experience be like a day or a week for someone taking this hybrid model? They would spend a certain amount of time doing the coursework online, and then how many days or how many hours? a
So
day?
our plan right now is to require the students to be in the high school for 3 hours per week. And we've done that in hopes of increasing our opportunities for success here. Speaking to what Dr. Muntz was saying about online education, we want to have a hybrid approach so that we can get to those students and help them if they need help, or help coach them forward if they are falling behind. So a typical, and then also we have flexibility there. So a student who is achieving and on pace and on track, we can work with the family and decide if they need it. If they're asking for a little bit of time off because they have a family trip plan, those are the sorts of things that we can be flexible with now under this mastery model. On the other side of your question, a typical week would look, a student would either do their work in with our coach, with our learning lab, or do some at home and have a check-in with their learning lab folks, maybe get ahead with those folks. But we are checking with every student every week for at least 3 hours to start, so that we can assess where they are and then provide additional support as needed. But it would be a combination of being at home, working, or wherever they're accessing the content, and then coming into school.
And then you mentioned a minimum of 3 hours would be required if they needed additional support. Would that option be available?
Absolutely, so we're going to have our teachers available in the school, and we're planning on continuing that if we need, correct. And if need be, if the student needs more time, we would not turn them away.
Ms. Hodges?
Is the schedule for every student the same, or if they're doing really well in a class and they meet all the requirements, can they finish it early and even possibly take another course?
Very good question, yeah. Absolutely. The student can complete the course content as they wish. What the course content will do immediately after they're pre-assessed is create a timeline for them in the window of our 5 weeks. And basically, there's 2 indicators of their progress. One is how they're doing in mastering and their actual grade in the course, but the other is whether or not they're staying on track or falling behind based on the timeline. And so a student, if they wanted to complete the course in a week, could obviously put in all the time that it would take normally over that 5 weeks and knock it out and be done with it. And so that would be completely appropriate in this model.
And the testing for that would be from this Ingenuity to see that they've mastered
Yes, so there is a final assessment that's given to students to determine that. And typically, if it's an acceleration course, that final assessment is used to determine what they still need to learn. However, it's a diagnostic when it's a remedial course. So it's looking to, again, find, it may not be sequential standards if kids have not mastered skills the kids have not mastered at that point.
And if the keystones were administered, would that be a one-time administration at the end of the summer for students, even if they sort of went through it at the beginning?
Correct. The window's in late July. The state sets the window. So the students, we would, again, based on our enrollment, we would create the opportunity for students to sit for the keystone during that window.
The positive piece about that is the next Keystone administration window would be the winter of the next school year. So it's really a nice partnering of an end of course exam for Keystone with the time at which the course is taken during the summer school.
And would these be students that may not be able to graduate because they hadn't met the requirement of the keystone, so that they could actually receive a diploma at the end of the summer then, instead of waiting to December?
Essentially,
That's a moment.
yes, yeah.
Ms. Fuller?
Do I understand then that the students may have the opportunity to take that final assessment more than once if they need to?
Yes, yes. So we can set, again, with the chairs, we can set the number of retakes that students reported for some of the unit assessments along with the final assessment. But there's no way, one of the things unique against the Edgenuity courseware is it eliminates the ability to sort of cheat. So it won't give necessarily the same exact item back to the student in the process of the retake.
Mr. Rose?
Thank you. Traditionally, what's been the percentage of students who take summer school who are doing remediation?
About 2/3 are doing remediation.
And so
A
about-
rough estimate, I don't know.
Okay, so about a third are doing acceleration.
Under the old model.
Do you see that percentage changing under this model?
I do. I see more students accessing acceleration under this model. I also see more students accessing remediation because we are closing the door to some folks because of those attendance requirements who just simply are not permitted to take summer school courses because of the attendance requirements in place. So I do see I see both sides increasing.
And you started to talk about this topic when Dr. Munson asked you a couple of questions. Why ingenuity?
Can I have Ms. Whitman speak to that?
Sure.
She's the one that I'll tell you, she vetted many of the vendors, and so I think it's important that she speaks to that.
Okay.
Thank you.
And again, I did vet the vendors, and I was looking for something specific that was tailored to mastery-based learning. I thought that was very important, especially as we try to prepare kids to be able to remediate to pass some of the Keystone coursework. That was unique even to the current provider. Edgenuity has been evaluated quite heavily. It's one of the only cyber providers that's approved by the NCAA for its coursework. A lot of the providers that are out there currently have lost that approval. And so I believe the content to be rigorous, and I believe that it will meet the needs of the students in terms of the ability to be customized for them and meet their needs where they're at in order to, again, master the content that they need to.
Thank you. And is this an experiment or is this the future of summer school?
Of summer school.
Of summer school here?
If this was an implementation of this model, if this was unsuccessful and did not meet the needs of our students, then I think we would reevaluate that after we complete this summer school. But that, I would say, is not my expectation going forward based on my consultation with other school districts who implement this model. And again, I think in the same way that we're maybe limiting the student who can't be at the library all day long, we've limited the student who can't attend every day for 5 weeks, who can't get transportation there every day. And so this does give a little bit of flexibility based on the work schedule of parents, based on trips and some of the activities that these students are involved in, that they would be able to stay with their coursework as they engage in some of those things that fill their summer.
And then how does Edgenuity compare to our online programs now?
I believe that Edgenuity offers a very rigorous content that I feel very secure in terms of preparing students for not only Keystones, that's not the only thing important there, but in terms of, again, being able to move in and out of a certain curriculum and be able to meet their needs. Even our cyber kids right now are unique in their needs. And right now, I would not, I think it would be an improvement. So if this summer program is successful, we would be taking a hard look at possibly moving to this provider.
Or at least something, an approach along those lines.
Correct. Something again with a mastery base.
I guess that's what I was getting at with my
Okay.
question, and I thank you for answering that. At this point, I don't have any more questions. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions as well. Under the old model, it was a 5-week program per class, 70 minutes per day. Is that 5 days a week?
Yes.
Okay, so under the old model, it was 5 hours and 50 minutes of seat time, spread out evenly across 5 days, that they had to be at the high school. They had no flexibility there. And so to address Mr. Ballard's point, this is not, I don't view this as an undue burden on the families, because we've made, instead of them having to be for a specific 70-minute period each day, 5 days a week, they have 3 hours, so half of that time they have to be there. But then they have a lot more flexibility on when they do the computer learning that's available here in the high school. But under the old model, they have to be here anyway. So now, instead of having to be here for a very fixed schedule, if they want to come in for a couple of hours on Monday, but then they have to work on Tuesday, or they have a doctor's appointment or whatever, they don't have to come in on Tuesday, even if they don't have access to the internet or a computer at home. I view this as functionally even better than what we had before because of that flexibility. A couple of other things that I noted. This is only the core courses that we're offering this year, is that correct? So that would be English, mathematics, biology.
Correct. We'd be replicating what we've offered in our past brick and mortar summer school. Core content. We do have some of the electives like driver ed and the experientials.
Well, driver ed, I've never considered an experiential class, and it would seem to me to be driver training is. That has the simulator behind the wheel. But driver education, that would seem to be a perfect fit for this kind of model. Am I not?
Pennsylvania has very strict requirements to meet the driver ed program itself, so it's a little bit of a different animal than all of the other coursework that we engage in. You'll actually see that when we look at approving the driver ed curriculum.
Okay, so that's a state requirement that
Correct.
prevents us from offering this model.
We may be able to move to it, but currently we would have to develop that and get it approved by the state. If I can answer that
Okay, so
correctly.
the state has to approve a curriculum for driver's ed. All right. I think another advantage to the model that I see is the pre-assessment that allows the students to focus on those areas where they need the most help. I think that's a tremendous advantage to our students. The downfall of classroom learning is always you have one teacher teaching 25, 30, 35 students. They're presenting the same material, even if a third of the class is ready to move faster, a third of the class needs to move a little slower, and a third of the class is right on target. So I view this as a real advantage in the self-paced learning, far superior to the typical lecture type setting. But I love the fact that there is the lab that's available to provide that extra help, to provide that kind of tutoring that's necessary. I think this is a very innovative model, and I appreciate very much you bringing it to us.
Mr. Dobbs, I just want to follow up. This is Dr. Bacher's follow-up, which is you had mentioned a couple of times that you anticipate an increased enrollment. Do you have a threshold where at what point you feel you're going to need to add teachers to the lab, or can you just continue to manage a larger number of students simply by altering the schedule? And I'll just tack on to that. Assume the cost that is built into their fees, so that when you hit that threshold, their fees will continue to cover the cost of an extra staffers. Do you have a sense of at what point you need more teachers?
Yeah, sure. We're basing the projections on the 180 students that we had run prior. I do feel that more students are going to take advantage of the acceleration because of the ability to take some of the content that we couldn't schedule in the past. If we had more students at the remediation, I would definitely say we need to take a look at hiring an additional person for the lab. However, in the acceleration model, again, if the students are if it's typical for the way that we've seen in the past with acceleration, the students typically know what they need to do and take off with that. I actually imagine that more students are going to complete the coursework quicker than the 5 weeks, based on that acceleration model. That would be guesswork at this point.
So you don't have a fixed threshold?
Not at this point.
No, no.
But it's something that we consider. We may need to change the hours of the lab. I mean, those things are flexible, and as you said, it's hopefully self-funding at that point. So, you know, we would identify those thresholds. We need to add or we need more time to do so.
Mr. Bennett?
Yeah, with respect to your comment, Mr. Ershaw, I did the math too. It's 7 times, 70 minutes times 5 days, 350, roughly 6 hours a week. And you have a 3-hour lab in its place. The person who doesn't have internet access has to come into school almost the same level, or maybe even higher than they did when they had just a 70-minute time in the lab, or in the class during summer school. So I just wanted to point out there could develop an inequity there, and just have somebody look at it, see if there's something else we could do in that particular situation.
Absolutely. And our first goal is to meet student needs. We would absolutely look at that.
Ms. Hodges?
Yes, for the lab, is there always a subject teacher in the lab? So there's always one of each subject available to what it is that the person's taking?
Correct. So during the lab hours, there's a special education teacher, a language arts teacher, and a math teacher who would be there from 9 to 12, 5 days a week.
And do you anticipate that these accelerated classes may be taken so that the classes that the students can take for college credit can be fit into their schedules during the school time?
Whenever a student accelerates, they do create more space in their schedule. So to answer your question, a student may choose to accelerate one of their courses in order to open up that space. But the reason for accelerating varies student to student. But a lot of the reasons students do accelerate is to open up room in their schedules in their junior and senior year to take higher level courses. That's a common reason that they would accelerate.
Dr. Munson?
First, just an observation, the extent of questions about this presentation, I think you can see anything in the year and a half I've been on the board. And, I think it suggests a real interest and engagement with issues of instruction and curriculum on the part of the board. I did have 2 questions. The first is, do I understand correctly that the contract that you would sign with Edgenuity is a year by year, or do you have to? Are you committing to more than one summer?
Just to clarify, the board has to approve contracts.
Okay. Is your intention to bring before the board a contract that would be more than 1 year to start?
No, and for now, we would be looking just at some courses.
Right. Okay. And then the other question, which it just to help me understand how it works, it's not about this change, it's about summer school generally, is what accommodation, if any, does the district make for students who are in need of remediation but don't have the financial resources to pay, and how does that fit into the model?
So last year, approximately 1/6 of our revenue was lost to what we do in that case, which is half the cost of tuition for students with free reduced lunch. So we took out, we didn't take in 1/6 of the revenue we could have in order to make sure that those students had enough food. But it is not cost-free because we provided one chance at it during the school year, but we do try to lower the cost, and it's covered through the tuition for the students. We don't reduce costs for acceleration.
Let's be clear.
Just remediation.
Correct.
I'm sorry. Thank you for clarifying.
Ms. Hodges?
What is the cost of the class?
Cost of the classes. There's 3 tiers. There's 3 tiers. So a student taking a half-year course for remediation, a half-year course for acceleration, which is the same cost breakdown of a student who's taking a 5-week course for remediation, and then there's a 5-week acceleration. So the breakdown is approximately $200 for a 2.5-week course. That would be our experiential courses as well, the ones that they're coming in for, about which we've spoken. The remediation course, that middle level that I spoke, $250 and $300 for an acceleration. And last year, we were within $40 to $60 of those prices as well.
I don't see any other questions, so thank you very much for your presentation this evening.
Thank you for the question.